Welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us on this very warm summer day. Lovely. So for those who don't know, my name is Camille. I am your Lake Blitz program coordinator from Living Lakes, Canada. I'm coming to you from the unceded traditional territory of the Silt, Ktunaxa, Secwepemc, and Sinixt peoples. I'm very grateful to get to reside on this traditional territory and to get to do this work for water stewardship. I've had such an amazing time getting to know you all over email, helping you with any technical glitches that you're having with monitoring, or just sharing our love for lakes and love for doing this monitoring work. So it's great to see you come to these monthly meetups and learn more about you and share some of these really interesting learnings about water stewardship and lake ecosystem stewardship and restoration and all those great things. Cool. I'd like to also recognize our amazing partners and sponsors, the RBC Royal Bank, their Tech for Nature funding program that supports the Lake Blitz. Also, Kicking Horse Coffee, David's Tea, and Lush Cosmetics for donating the prizes for our photo challenge. And our program partners, Earth Rangers, Aqua Action, and Water Rangers, who make our amazing Lake Blitz kits. So we couldn't do this program without all of your support in very different capacities. So big thanks to all of our amazing partners and sponsors for making the program possible. So here's a bit of an overview of how the presentations and our session together is going to go. So we've got this introduction from me that will include, some of our program updates, reminders, and also sort of frame this topic and, why we wanted to talk about wildlife conservation in terms of, the Lake Blitz and the monitoring that you're doing. We have two amazing speakers. We've got Grace Wiley from the Turtle Guardians out of Haliburton, Ontario. We also have Neil Fletcher from the BC Wildlife Federation, who'll be sharing his work. So thank you both for joining us. We're really excited to learn more about the work you do, and I'll do a more detailed introduction to our brilliant presenters later on. We also have a very generous question and discussion section. So I welcome everybody to, hold your questions. You can enter them in the chat whenever they're popping into your head, so they're fresh and they're related to the presentation or really just things that you've been wondering while out monitoring. This is the time to ask and get some clarity and really foster an interesting discussion. So at any point, you can enter those in the chat. And Tracy, our amazing communications assistant from Living Lakes, Canada, she'll be keeping track of all those questions in the chat. And then she'll be reading them out in our question period. So everyone will get their questions answered. If for whatever reason we run out of time, we can answer those questions over email. But if you'd rather verbally ask your question during that discussion period, then you can go ahead and raise your hand. Then you can unmute, and then you can go ahead and ask, and we'll answer your questions. A note that this session is recorded. So if for whatever reason you don't want to be recorded, you can shut your camera off, or you can just ask your question into the chat if you don't want your voice recorded or anything like that. But those are the nuts and bolts of the question and discussion period. I'm just going to pull up my notes again as they've disappeared. Awesome. And sorry, a little tech glitch here, you guys. Lovely. Making that look nice again. Great. So for those who missed the last monthly meetup, the idea of these sessions really came from the desire to connect more with our volunteers and provide these really awesome additional opportunities for learning from all of these partner groups from across Canada that we've had the pleasure of meeting for, maybe we met them last year in our pilot year, but really started to develop these relationships in the 2022 Lake Blitz. So this is an opportunity to make you aware of their great work and to have them share their knowledge so that you can increase your exploration and your own knowledge base as well. So I guess overall, this is a national campaign, which is pretty obvious, but this sort of it can make it hard for us to feel really connected as a team. And we know that feeling of connection as a group is super important for encouraging volunteers to carry on doing this work. We also understand that the world of lake monitoring and wildlife monitoring, ecosystem monitoring is really vast and oftentimes complex. And through these talks, we hope to make this information way more accessible and provide opportunities for you to connect with professionals in their field and help you explore your curiosities a bit more. So today we'll be learning from wildlife conservationists from BC and Ontario who are working to protect freshwater species and their habitats. And they'll share how you in BC and Southern Ontario can get involved. This is increasingly important work as human impacts and climate change continue to challenge the biodiversity of freshwater ecosystems. I sent out this, I cited this really awesome journal article from the Canadian Journal of Fisheries and Aquatic Sciences. They state that almost 12% of freshwater species, that's including plants and animals, are listed as at risk, with almost 18% listed as special concern. This report also reminds us that Canada contains 20% of the world's freshwater, which includes 7% of the Earth's free-flowing renewable resources. And I didn't know this, but a quarter of all of the wetlands globally. So Canada, as it also contains, 2 million lakes and 8,500 rivers, it really makes these watersheds in Canada like crucial homes for the world's freshwater biodiversity. And as we know, human impacts such as development, agriculture practices, pollution, and climate change grows, these ecosystems are becoming the most threatened globally. So, these changes combined with the impacts of climate change, such as the ones that we're monitoring for, like rising temperatures, invasive species encroachment, and algae blooms, they become even more impactful over time. So, as we're experiencing with this intense heat, everything with climate change gets more intense. So that's why this monitoring and this work that Grace and Neil and their teams are doing is so important. Well, that's wonderful. Like I said, just in closing, to sum it all up, I'm just really thankful when we're looking at all these challenges that freshwater ecosystems are experiencing, that there are people like you who care enough to monitor your lake, and organizations in Canada like Turtle Guardians and the BC Wildlife Federation working to address this issue through their monitoring, education, and restoration work in different capacities. So we're really looking forward to offering more of these sessions near the end of each sampling month. The topics we're looking at for future talks are limnology, which is the study of lakes, the importance of outdoor education, and perhaps water data management and how it can lead to decision making. So those are just some of the topics we'll hopefully be exploring in our August and September meetup. As a program update, we now have our frequently asked questions section on the webpage. We're also working to get resources like the report that I cited in the previous slide up onto the website so you can access everything in one place. And also the previous resources that I've included in the emails that I've been sending, so you can just go to one spot and find everything. As an awesome kudos to you guys, we have almost 500 data points now on the Lake Blitz observation map, with almost 120 lakes being monitored. So that just means we're getting a lot of duplicate awesome data points over the monitoring season on 120 lakes, which is a huge deal because last year we were only able to monitor 25 lakes at the start of the program. So it's showing some real amazing growth. So kudos to you guys, and thank you for helping us meet that goal and surpass it. That's really amazing work. So just a few reminders. So we have a nice 2-week break from monitoring coming up, with the next monitoring weekend being the weekend of July 12th. This is a great time to check out the data you've collected so far on the Lake Blitz observation map. If you don't see the points on the map, or you are looking at your data and you want to make any adjustments, spelling errors, you missed a data point or something like that, just let us know. You can email me at lakeblitz@livinglakescanada.ca, and we can go into the back end and fix the issues super quickly and easily. So just let us know if there's anything you want to change. Some of the common errors are, like I said, spelling mistakes, or your data point is located at your house and not your lake. So we can definitely change that. It's super easy to do. So good time to take a look at the data you've entered, make sure it's what you want to see. And also a reminder for all you photo takers out there that the Lake Biodiversity Photo Challenge is accepting photo entries until the end of July. So I'll just pop over to my last slide here for my introduction and update. So this week is your last week to submit photos to the Lake Biodiversity Photo Challenge. You can visit Lake Blitz at livinglakescanada.ca to submit your photos to our 2022 gallery. Just as a bit of a background, this challenge encourages you to take a lake photo that captures the biodiversity or the impacts that threaten lake biodiversity. The photos can be submitted, like I said, on our website, to the Lake Blitz email, or on social media by using the hashtag LakeBlitzPhoto. Contest closes on July 31st. So that's this Sunday. So this is a great weekend to snap your photos. There is a voting system for our public favorite. So you can go onto the photo gallery. There's little hearts there that you can click on the photo that you like. That'll be your vote. And then that'll be all tallied up at the end, so we can choose our public favorite in each category. So that closes on August 15th. So we've got a couple weeks after all the photos come in to submit your choice for the voting for your public favorite. As a reminder, the categories are most biodiverse, capture a lake photo showcasing the lake's beautiful biodiversity, so capturing plants and animals as much as possible. There's most impacted, which is also a really important category. It's you capture a lake photo where there are visible instances of impacts, such as if there's some pollution or deforestation on the upper slopes of the lake, wildfire smoke, or any adjacent industry or development. Those are all considered impacts, and still do make beautiful photos that are educational as well. We also have a kids category where photographers 12 and under can submit their photos. We've got some awesome age appropriate prizes for the kids category as well. You can read all about how many prizes are available. We got 6 prizes to be won. You can read more about how that's decided through the public favorite, and then also our judges favorite on our website. There's lots of information there, and I encourage you to share any photo that you've taken in the past year of a lake that you love. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Grace Wiley. Grace is the Education and Outreach Coordinator for Turtle Guardians, a program of Land Between Charity. She is a graduate of the Fleming College Fish and Wildlife Program, and also graduated from Trent University with an honors Bachelor of Science in Biology and Environmental Sciences. Grace has had the privilege of working on several turtle research projects across Ontario, and started with the Turtle Guardians in 2020. She just finished her 5th field season working with the turtles, which sounds amazing. We're so excited to learn more about your work, Grace, and I'll just pass it along to you to get set up and share your screen.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming. I'm just going to show you a special guest before I share my screen. This is Figgy, the snapping turtle, one of our 10 teaching turtles that we have here at Turtle Guardians. And I always love to show a turtle during a talk, something a little bit interesting to look at. And if you hear something scratching around on the floor, then it's probably Figgy. Turtles are very chaotic to take care of. So anyway, I'm going to share my screen now and turn off my video so my screen doesn't lag. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Looks good, Grace.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm from, as Camille so wonderfully introduced me, I'm from Turtle Guardians, which is a program of the Land Between charity located in Ontario, in Haliburton. So that's in cottage country of Ontario in central Ontario. And first, I'd like to acknowledge that the Land Between is located in Williams Treaty 20, Mississauga, Anishinaabe territory, and Treaty 61, Robinson Huron territory, in the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe. We respectfully acknowledge that these First Nations are the stewards and caretakers of these lands, waters, and animals, and they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. So Turtle Guardians and the Land Between charity have some pretty great sponsors as well as partnerships that we've created. Most of them are in Ontario, but some of them you might notice and recognize if you live outside of Ontario. Places like the Toronto Zoo, Scales Nature Park is our largest partner. And even Lush Canada, which I heard that Living Lakes is also getting some sponsorship from, so that's awesome. So the Land Between is not only the name of our charity, but it's also a region. And the Land Between is actually a region in central Ontario. So if you're not familiar with Ontario geography, that's we're about 2 hours north of Toronto. Maybe 3, depending on traffic. And it's this massive section of Ontario that spans across the central section of the province from the Georgian Bay area, so that's on Lake Huron, all the way across into the Frontenac Arch, so into the Ottawa area. And this area is really, really special, which is why we are located here and have named our charity after the Land Between. So the Land Between is a last stronghold for a lot of important habitats, including over 2,400 lakes. And we have the highest density of shorelines in Ontario. So it's a really important area to protect, especially for a lot of different species. Which I'll get into in a second. So what we do at the Land Between is we work to achieve bioregionalism, and we work to achieve that through conservation projects, through education, and conserving economic pillars and habitats across the region so that we can preserve this really last stronghold for a lot of species. So, the land, and I'm sorry about my internet connection. It's saying it's unstable, so hopefully I don't cut out on you guys. I probably will come back if I do. So the Land Between has a lot of cornerstone projects, and one of those projects is Turtle Gardens, which is the project that I mainly run. We also have a project called Blue Lakes, a Habitat Highlands project, which Figgy is climbing. Oh, can you take him? Oh, okay. Giving Figgy to someone else. Okay. So We have the Habitat program, which are checkups where we go to people's properties and help them to create a plan to better their property for wildlife that lives there, specific to that property and to what that landowner wants and needs. Similarly, our Shoreland Gardens project, we go to different areas where somebody owns shoreline, and we create a plan with those landowners to rehabilitate the shoreline as naturally as possible and create them their own specific shoreland project. For example, that may be to deter things like Canada geese getting onto their property all the time, or to ensure that they'll have more turtles or other wildlife coming into their property. So those are just some of the projects. Specifically, the Blue Lakes project is a voluntary project that groups of interested volunteers can involve and sign their lake up for this eco label. Eco label is a testament for not on the lake health, but actually based you dedicated to preserving the lake. And so what this does is it actually improves the property values of these properties on the lakes and preserves the lake health for generations. So what the project is, it gives people the template tools to protect their lake, and also gives them tons of opportunities to get involved with the lake and learn more about it. So we do a lot of different workshops. So an example of that would be a Bugs in the Mud workshop, where we would come and do bug sampling with the interested group and show the group how to sample insects, which are really important for lake health and showing whether your lake is healthy. And there's tons of other workshops like that that are available through the Blue Lakes project. And so on top of those education opportunities, it also provides forums and funding to improve the health of the lake. And most of these Blue Lake projects currently are going on within the Haliburton area and within the land between. So specifically, my job is I'm the education and outreach coordinator for the Turtle Guardians program, which takes up the largest program in the Land Between charity and takes up a lot of our time and energy. So the Turtle Guardians program has two main goals. So the one goal is education. So we go around pretty much to anywhere that will take us, farmers markets, libraries, schools, and we bring our education turtles, just like Figgy, who you met, to these areas and teach people about turtles. The other thing that we do is research. And so we actually just finished our third research season at Turtle Guardians. And the research that we're doing is specific to roads. So we're looking at where turtles are crossing a lot, especially areas where turtles are nesting on the side of the road, which is a major issue because all of Ontario's turtles are at risk. And most turtles are at risk. So we have federal listings of at risk and provincial listings within your own province that you can look on how that animal is listed within the province. So for example, the Blandings turtle, which is one of our target species for our study, is listed as threatened in Ontario, throughout Canada. So what we do is we go around, we have this field on roads on rainy mornings and during evenings. And so we stay out until the middle of the night, 2 a.m. Turtles like next. And we watch for turtles that are laying eggs. And we also get tons and tons and tons of calls from people all across cottage country that they've seen a turtle laying eggs. And when that turtle lays eggs on the side of the road, we collect the eggs through special permits, and we are able to actually then take the eggs back to our facility. We incubate the eggs for about 2 months, and then once the babies hatch, within 10 days, they're released back into the wild, and into their mother's ancestral wetlands, so within a kilometer of where those eggs were found. And this is a really important program because less than 1% of turtle eggs will, turtle babies will survive to adulthood in populated areas in Canada, in Ontario. So what that means is that most of turtle eggs are eaten before they even hatch, especially within the first 48 hours of being laid. Because when a turtle lays their eggs on the side of the road, it's very easy for a predator to find those eggs and to eat them. So the risk of them being predated actually goes up with turtles laying their eggs on the side of the road. The other reason that we have to excavate eggs from the side of the road is because most of our 2-lane highways in this area are graded every so often. So that means a large machinery comes in and grates the side of the road, and that would kill the turtle eggs. Even if somebody pulled over on the side of the road on top of a nest that they didn't know was there, that would crush the eggs under the ground as well. And of course, if the babies did survive to adulthood, then they would have to cross a road to get back to water. So it's very difficult to see turtle babies on the road in the time and safely through that. And so we give them a much better chance of survival through our incubation program. So as I mentioned, all 8 species of turtle in Ontario are species at risk, and they do have special protections. So our turtles that we have in our care here, we have special permits that allow us to keep them. And the turtles that we are handling, measuring and taking information from during our field season, we have permits to do that as well. And without these programs and without interference, we're going to lose turtles. There's not a chance for them to really get across the road safely. And that's because they have to cross roads. Within Southern Ontario, so just south of us, you can't go more than 1 kilometer with running into a road. So there are roads literally everywhere. And turtles are very habitual and they cannot create new habits, which means we can't relocate turtles. It just doesn't work. Is what studies have shown us, is that usually relocation doesn't end well and isn't very successful. So turtles have to cross roads throughout their lifetime, especially mother turtles that are laying their eggs. So instead of relocation, we aim to educate people to live with turtles, especially education when it comes to the snapping turtle, which is something that a lot of people are fearful of. So we work to dispel myths around the snapping turtle and around turtles in general, and help people learn how to help turtles cross the road safely. So as I mentioned, we protect turtle nests all across central Ontario and within cottage country. And this year alone, we have over 7,000 turtle eggs in our incubators. Last year, we had just over 5,000 turtle eggs in our incubators. But when we did the math to see the odds of how many turtles would survive from our releases, we'd be lucky if about 13 of those baby turtles survived based on the math. So we really need to attempt to balance the scales. And to do that, we need to get as many turtle eggs in our incubators as possible every single year. And so every year we're trying to incubate as many eggs as our permits will allow. So there's a few different ways that you can get involved with the Land Between Charity and Turtle Guardians. The first way is to become a turtle guardian. So actually anybody can become a turtle guardian. It doesn't matter if you're in Ontario. We have turtle guardians actually all across the world. And to be a turtle guardian, you can actually sign up online on our Turtle Guardians website. And all you have to do to get your level 1 turtle guardian is to pass a test to learn all 8 of Ontario's turtle species. And then you can work through the levels of the Turtle Guardians program. And the highest level would be to be a paid staff member who actually is out doing the field work. So most children who become turtle guardians when they are young do our turtle camp. So we actually run a day camp here at our headquarters every summer. And it's a very popular and really fun camp where the kids get to learn about turtles and pass their level 1 tests. There's also other ways you can get involved and volunteer programs. So we have 4 turtle specific volunteer programs. We have wetland watchers, which is when you would sign up to watch wetlands to your house or what you know is not currently being monitored. So a wetland can be anything from an area that's connected to a lake is very weedy, that might be a coastal marsh, or somewhere that's kind of swampy. There's lots of different kinds of wetlands across Canada. And what we're looking for is information about what you're seeing. So you go out about once a week in the summer and report back to us whether you're seeing turtles and what kinds of turtles you're seeing. Similarly, we have the Road Researcher Program, which is monitoring turtles on roads. So you would monitor a section of road of your choosing once a week during the summer and tell us what you're finding. We have nest sitters also all across Ontario that monitor nesting turtles. So when we get a call that there's a turtle nesting, we actually have a call list. We call out our nest sitters and they will watch that turtle nest from a distance, from about 2 meters, and wait for the turtle to nest and get back to their wetland or across the road if need be, so that they know that turtle is safe. And the reason we do this is because mother turtles are very, very vulnerable. It can take them up to 4 hours to lay their eggs. So this is a long time where they're sitting on the side of the road. Maybe they're partially in the road in some cases, and they really need protection because there are people who intentionally hit turtles, which is an offense and can be fined up to $15,000 and a year in jail if there is proof. But it's a difficult thing to prove. And so the best way that we can protect them is to have nest sitters kind of babysit that mama turtle. We also have turtle crossing guards. So in areas that we know are main hotspots where turtles are crossing the road a lot, we will send them out on shifts in mornings and evenings. And just like a normal crossing guard, you would help the turtles cross the road and report what you found. We have a pretty extensive bird program for aerial insectivores, which are greatly declining in Ontario. So you can monitor birds in your backyard. You can, sorry, my spit. You can also monitor snakes in your area or invasive Phragmites, which is a major issue for our wetlands in Ontario. So if you have any questions, we'll leave them to the end, but the best way to get involved with Turtle Guardians is just following it on our social media. We're on everything you can think of as @Turtle Guardians. And yeah, thank you so much for listening.
Oh, that was wonderful, Grace. Thank you so much. Yeah, my goodness. I love all the images of your volunteer programs and that, classic image of the Adirondack chairs in Ontario, watching the nest, being a nest sitter. Like, what a great way, an important way to like spend your summer during nesting periods. So that really stuck out to me as something I would love to get involved in if I lived closer. But that's wonderful. Lots of great opportunities to get involved for those of you who are in Ontario. I'm just going to go and share my slides now, and we'll do a bit of an intro and then on to our next presentation. Okay. Perfect. So again, thank you so much, Grace. I'd like to now welcome Neil Fletcher from the BC Wildlife Federation. Neil is the Director of Conservation Stewardship with BC Wildlife Federation. He has 12 years of experience working with communities all across BC to raise awareness about the importance of wetlands. and build capacity for individuals to better conserve these important ecosystems. He has delivered well over 100 educational workshops and coordinated over 30 wetland restoration projects in the province of BC. Neil is chair of the Wetlands Stewardship Partnership of BC, which is a steering committee member on the Canadian Wetland Roundtable. So he's also involved as a committee member on that Canadian Wetland Roundtable and on the BC Water Leaders Network. So very involved there in lots of different amazing capacities. He is the lead author of the province's Forest Range Evaluation Program, Wetland Health Assessment Protocol. In 2016, Neil was also awarded Canadian Outdoors Person of the Year by the Canadian Wildlife Federation for his contributions to conservation. He lives in New Westminster on Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Kakite unceded territory by the Fraser River. So welcome, Neil. I'll pass it on to you to share your slides.
Thank you very much. I'll get the slide deck up in a moment here. All right. Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining. And I was looking at all the data that was collected across Canada for this Blitz work, and well done for all those that contributed. Hi, Bruce. Nice to see you on the call as well. I actually have a slide of you at the very end that I pulled up because I couldn't believe that you joined the call today. I'm at the very end of my slide deck. 1 second here. Go to the start. Okay, here we are. When I was asked to give this presentation, I have to let you know, I think most of my work has been around wetlands in the last 12 years. And when I think of lakes, I think of lacustrine wetlands. Those are wetlands associated with lakes. So I'll be focusing a bit on that. I put this together specifically, this presentation specifically for this talk, just thinking that, thinking of salient points that might be important to the people joining today. In terms of wildlife that we monitor, we often partner with a lot of different groups, and we work with a lot of different communities. So some of the examples are actually invites, or covering ways of monitoring wildlife that we would introduce during a workshop, but that we would invite a host or a guest to come share. So I was hoping today to plant a few seeds of different ideas that you could do to get out there and do conservation work. I stayed away from turtles because I knew that would be covered well today as well. Incidentally, BC only has one native species of turtle, two subpopulations. The one on the west coast is quite rare and endangered, and then the one on the interior blue listed. Anyways, just to start, what are wetlands? If you're coming from the lake world, what exactly are wetlands? Well, there's 3 ingredients that make up a wetland: presence of water, lakes have those too. Whoops. Soils modified by that presence of water. So these are soils that have adapted to the wet conditions. And then lastly are plant communities. So that 3rd ingredient is really important and distinguishes what you would consider the main part of the lake from the wetland edges of the lake. So here's an example of a little Slocan lake in the Kootenays of British Columbia. And the wetland essentially is from where we're standing, from where the photographer's standing, all the way out to where you can see the last of that floating aquatic vegetation. And then the open part of the lake is the other part of the lake. So there definitely wetlands can be parts of a lot of our lake ecosystems and can be very important for them. Here's another example of a wetland/lake. This is called Burnaby Lake, just outside of Vancouver. And you can see it's full of aquatic vegetation. I would argue that this should be called Burnaby shallow water wetland as opposed to Burnaby Lake, but they do dredge it so then people can row there in the summertime. This is also a lake. However, it's 10,000 years old. and has been filled in by a wetland. This is Jim Pojar standing here. He's a well-known botanist in BC, and he stuck this pole down to a group that we were with, and he told us that he carbon dated the bottom of the lake being about 9,000 years old when it started. So this one is an infilled lake, and then it transitioned into a wetland. So wetlands and lakes are, you know, a good pair together, you could say. When we think about the functions of lakes, you could look at, there's a couple of different sort of protocols to sort of measure what are the values or functions of wetlands. And when we look at wetlands adjacent to lakes, there's a few things that come to the surface. One is they help to stabilize the soils around the edges. So when we're talking about the riparian area or the transition zone between an upland habitat and the lake itself, they're helping to buffer and protect property and reduce soil erosion. They're also really highly valuable for public use. If it's an inlet to a lake, it can be important for, the wetland could be important for water quality, improving the quality of the water coming into the lake. There's often a lot of archaeological values associated with lake type wetlands, because a lot of First Nations traditionally and currently collect a lot of traditional medicines and other foods from those systems. Waterbird habitat and fish habitat as well are really important. So those are some of the things that we think of when we're thinking about wetlands and lakes. BC Wildlife Federation, we're interested in the wildlife. We're interested in supporting greater and stronger populations of wildlife. And a lot of wildlife that we have in BC, about 600 species, are associated with wetlands. This is a photo I took up north. This is a 1 by 1 meter roughly square piece. And if you take a close look, you can see that it's a very active area. We have bear, we have deer, we have moose, all using and accessing a nearby wetland. Thinking of species at risk, there are a couple comments about how important wetlands are already. About a third of species at risk are associated with wetlands for at least part of their life in North America. And then just to bring it all home, this is a map of the lower mainland in British Columbia. You can see Vancouver on the far left, and you go to the far right, you can see Hope. The light blue is where wetlands used to be, and this is where they are today. If you've heard of the flooding that happened in Sumas Lake, or the Sumas Prairies, that used to be a lake, that's just down below the, it's one of the big blue blobs at the very bottom down here. In any case, we've lost a lot of wetlands, and this story is not particular just to British Columbia. It is also in Ontario, Southern Ontario for sure. We've lost a lot of wetlands, lots of drainage. Back in 1996, the BC Wildlife Federation started the Wetlands Education program with the goal to raise the awareness about the importance of wetlands and build capacity among a community of stewards. Since we've started, we have a number of different workshops that we host. That's how I know Bruce, as he was at a wetland keepers course up in Fort St. John. But yes, we have a variety of programming, anything from 1 day to 7-day workshops, and then sometimes one-off workshops that we'll have on a specific subject as well. We generally get invited by local groups to come and support their training needs, and then fasten the workshop and the training to meet their needs as well. In addition to workshops, we do get involved in a lot of different conservation type of work. So anything from restoration projects, mapping and inventory, contracts. That's the Forest Range Evaluation Program, would be a contract we've posted with the provincial government. And then last year, we were involved in coordinating the hiring of 100 people to among a number of different organizations to protect wetlands and to do maintenance and monitoring on them. When I think of sort of like the framework of like, how do you think about getting involved in conservation and what actions can you take to support the conservation of wetlands? there's sort of these broad categories that kind of work together as these sort of these pieces. So information gathering, the data that you're collecting from lakes is sort of it's very core of making any sort of decisions. Without having information, you can't really make good decisions. From that is awareness building and you getting that information to the right people. That could be decision makers, it could be landowners, it could be anyone who needs to change their behavior or their actions. And then from that, there's a whole suite of other activities that can happen, anything from people that make legislation to changing land use, planning, as well as land securement or restoration. And then of course, that all requires some form of coordination and capacity building. Most of the work we do is around, we kind of focus at a whole scale level of protecting the wetland itself. If you protect the wetland, a lot of the wildlife will come and use it. So a lot of our work is around vegetation monitoring and looking at the types of plant communities that are established at the sites. We can glean a lot of information. Plants don't move around, so they're a lot easier to track down and chase. So almost every workshop that we host, you'll have some form of introduction to wetland plant identification, as well as understanding the different types of wetlands that there are. Here's a few just shots of some really interesting species that people get really excited to see. This is sundew. It's one of our carnivorous plants that lives in wetlands. I don't think it's in Ontario, but in British Columbia, we call this the Venus flytrap of the North. Yeah, it will digest insects where it lives with those tiny little adapted leaves that you can see there. This is another beautiful plant. This is buckbean, and it will grow. You will find in Ontario or in BC, grows in sort of the shallow water portions. And the distinguishing feature is the three leaves that you can see in the foreground there as well. So a couple of the projects that we've been involved in terms of monitoring and evaluating wetland ecosystems is getting better maps of where they are, to either work with industry or to work with local government. If you don't map it, then you don't protect it. And so a lot of our wetlands are not actually under protected because they're just not well mapped. We are working with the Canadian Wildlife Service to gather ground truth points and to send those ground truth points back to a geomatics department, which is then training computers how to find wetlands on the landscape. And so that is something that could be done with local groups. Here's a sort of a image of what a product might look like from a mapping project like that. So hard to see on this, but it's essentially it's adding and it's predicting where wetlands are based on a lot of field verified data that we're collecting and sharing with the geomatics department. I mentioned that we work with a lot of other organizations to promote some of the protocols that they've developed or that we developed in tandem. One of them that also exists actually in Ontario as well is a Marshbird monitoring protocol. Marshbird monitoring protocol has been around in Ontario for about 20 years, and it was officially launched last year in BC. We had worked with Wild Research and Bird Studies Canada. They're the ones that are managing the data and sort of coordinating the volunteers. But for the last decade, I've been introducing this at our workshops, telling people that this is coming. So here it is finally around. What it does is you would commit yourself to about three early mornings to go out and gather data from one sort of wetland location at least, like at minimum, but you'd have to commit to 3 times during the breeding season. And that helps us track trends over time in terms of bird populations. In Ontario, they've tracked a whole bunch of trends of how well different bird species are doing just based on citizen science. So a great project to consider. If you're into birding and you want to get your hands on birds, the best thing to do is talk to a research center where they would be bird banding. So there are opportunities probably in Ontario as well. You need to be a certified bird bander to run a station, but I do encourage volunteers to get involved in that. It's a fantastic experience to see birds up close. Definitely lots of smiling faces whenever that happens. Another example, this is me planting little seeds of ideas. This is with the Burnaby Lake Park Association. They do a nest box survey, as well as they put up and clean out wood duck boxes, as well as other cavity nesting birds. And they get volunteers to come out every year to help do the cleanup, and then to record trends in terms of population, or determining if they have to change where the nests are and things like that. So really fantastic opportunity, really great idea that they had to put that together. If you're into amphibians, we have what's called BC Frog Watch, or something similar to that. That's a really accessible thing for volunteers to do. A lot of it is based on either visual or auditory monitoring. So you're either listening for amphibians to call, or you are visually looking for either egg masses that are in the water, juveniles that might be still in their aquatic stage life form, or their terrestrial counterparts when they're full adults. So lots of opportunity there to monitor for wildlife looking through amphibians. And then if you want to do a deep dive, you can get connected to local groups that might be focusing on a species at risk. This is Oregon spotted frog. And a great group in the Lower Mainland is Precious Frog. They do work on trying to improve habitat for only about 5 known locations of where they breed in the Lower Mainland. And so here, what they're doing is they're studying their habitat needs. And then what you see, there's a little antenna around the Oregon spotted frog. They're using that to track where the frogs are and how they're using the landscape, so then new wetlands can be restored that kind of match the habitat preferences of Oregon spotted frog. Aquatic invertebrates, always a fun topic, something that I think any group can get involved in. Generally speaking, less permitting is required to be doing bug dip nets. On the top left, you can see the underside of a jaw that was taken off of a deceased specimen of a dragonfly larvae. And just out of interest, they can shoot their lower mandible about 1/3 of their body length out to catch their prey when they're in their aquatic life form. So just a cool little fact, but there's all sorts of weird monsters that you're going to be happy are really small and microscopic and not life size, not human size, that are swimming in your lakes and your wetlands. If you're familiar with the cabin protocol for streams, there is one being tested for wetlands as well. Last year, we partnered with BCIT, University of Guelph, Environment Canada, and a local consultant from the Kootenays to test out using a protocol for cabin. Essentially, this is looking at aquatic macroinvertebrates. So it's a bit more of a rigorous study of aquatic invertebrates, and we're still figuring that out. And I know that Living Lakes does do that work for streams. So thought I'd put that plug in. Bats, if you're interested in bats, lots of groups doing work on bats. This example here is from South Coast Bat Action Conservation Society. The entry level is using these little receivers to check out their sounds. It's less invasive. Obviously, we're quite concerned for bats right now. There's a disease going around where a lot of them are suffering. Also, COVID could be an issue to bats as well. So there's a lot of in terms of doing the mist netting, which you see on the left where people are touching them, there's a lot more regulations around that right now, and to protect the safety of bats and their colonies. But anyways, there are groups that are doing that, and sometimes at our workshops, we'll invite a bat expert to come and speak. Also, we install these wildlife monitoring cameras. These are often put around our restoration sites, so then we can see how wildlife is using the wetlands throughout the year. Here's a couple shots. You can see we have some deer at one of the sites, and you can also notice there's their little water level monitoring well. So then just with the wildlife camera, at the end of the year, we can actually track the height of water in that wetland throughout the season and determine, does it dry out? When does it dry out? Or does it stay permanently flooded throughout the year? So it's giving us some good information. Here are some Sandhill Crane. I think there's a little baby in the front, so it looks like a successful nesting site for Sandhill Crane at this site, which is great. Just going back to this slide, a lot of what I just described, the bats, the birds, the frogs, that's all kind of information gathering in terms of what's at your site. I just want to give a few more examples of land securement and restoration. This is Logan Lake. It is a wetland restoration project, 10 years in the making. This wetland drains into Logan Lake downstream of here. Lots of poor water quality from a salt shed that the Ministry of Transportation used to have on nearby had caused a lot of concerns in terms of the lake quality. And so one of the actions that the municipality has done, as well as BCIT, who have been leading a lot of the restoration work, is to introduce wetlands to the site. So then the water is cleaner going into the lake, and hopefully over time will improve the quality of the lake's water quality. Here's just a shot of the initial plans 10 years ago in the making. This was at one of our Wetlands Institute workshops. That's our sort of pillar project where we have a lot of people coming to join us and to learn about how to do wetland restoration. You apply to come to this. And incidentally, everyone in this photo went back to their community and had a wetland project and a story of their own that I could share with you at another time. But they all, they were all involved in a project, the ones that I see on the screen here, which is really great. Private land ownership. If you are a landowner that lives by a lake, of course, you have a role to play. This is Terry and Michelle Halloran. They have a nice parcel of land up in north of Kootenay Lake, and are very proud stewards of the land that they take care of. And for sure, there's an opportunity there for anyone who is a landowner. If you don't own land, but you are near land and care about it, this is what you can see behind these trees here is this large parcel of land that was just recently secured on Kootenay Lake. This is Crawford Bay Regional Park. Prior to it being a park, it was owned by a golf resort, I think with plans to develop. And the local community got together and said, there is so many values associated with this. And it's quite an amazing story about how you can get people together to protect a really important piece of a lake. This one here was the second largest wetland on this massive lake, the Kootenay Lake system. And so it's really great to see that this, like within about 3 years, they went from the sale being posted to the acquisition for the regional district. And that wasn't done on the regional without the regional district being pushed. And the regional district was pushed by their citizens, by the public who saw the value in it. So as a volunteer, if you're a bit of an activist and a bit of somebody who can talk and share ideas and advocate and comfortable talking to government, this is the kind of story you want to hear about. Lastly, I don't know how many people are under 30 on this call that are participating, but one of the things that the BC Wildlife Federation has been doing with the Canadian Wildlife Federation for the last 5 years or so is we've been hosting internships, volunteer internships with people that go through the Canadian Conservation Corps. And so through that, we get some really keen interns that come and join our programming, and we put them to work somewhere in the province doing work on wetlands. And so if you know somebody who is of that age category, Canadian Conservation Corps, it's a great program. How did I do for time? 12:32.
Good job.
Oh, and there's Bruce. And I had a story about Bruce. Bruce and Bruce maybe can add to it, but an advocate for these pond weeds that are showing up at Charlie Lake. And everybody complains about swimming in these pond weeds, but I saw Bruce so fascinated by these plants and wanting to learn more about them, and had quite a bit of knowledge when I met him. This was a few years ago, but all of these plants are actually quite unique and interesting. And I think, people that just want their swimming docks and, I used to call it seaweed, I think, when I was a kid, like you're swimming in the seaweed at a lake. But, these are fascinating plants. And actually pondweed, Potamogeton, has a Greek derivative. Like Potamogeton comes from a Greek word, which means friend of the river. And how beautiful is that? So, I mean, some of these weeds are worth keeping in your lakes. Anyways, I'll stop there.
I love that, friend of the river. That is fantastic. Thank you so much, Neil, for that presentation. I was just so inspired to see all of these programs and all these like restoration projects. They just represent such a win for wildlife in BC. And then I'm sure there's lots of other amazing work with the Canadian Wildlife Federation and other organizations taking place across Canada too. So thanks for sharing that. And we'll also be bugging Neil for any of these links to all those opportunities so we can share that in our follow-up email, because I'm sure some of you are going to be interested in pursuing something to do with bats or frogs or benthic invertebrates. If you're interested in like the more microscopic, less charismatic species, but lots of great opportunities there. So we're moving into our question period. I'm just going to pop up my very last slide, and then we will open the floor for questions. Fantastic. So if you wanted to unmute and ask your question, you can just use the raise hand function, which you can see at the bottom of your screen. You might have to click on the more and it will show up there. Otherwise, just you can type it into the chat and then Tracy will read them out to either myself or either of our speakers. And I'm also happy to get this going. So I did have a question. We were thinking about this topic. So this is relating to our volunteers when they're out monitoring. So if you're out monitoring, checking out your lake, making observations on wildlife, if you come across a wildlife in distress, what do you recommend that our volunteers will do? And we can maybe start with Grace if she has an answer for that, and then we can move on to Neil if he has anything he'd like to add.
Yeah, thank you. So specifically with turtles, if you find an injured turtle, in Ontario, we have the Ontario Turtle Conservation Center, which is a specific vet clinic for injured turtles. So that's all they do is injured turtles. And so I would recommend, if you found an injured turtle, to call that phone number. And they actually have turtle taxi drivers all across Ontario that will help ensure that the turtle makes it to the trauma center. So that's a really great thing for turtles. Otherwise, you can always call Turtle Guardians if you're one of our volunteers or involved in our programs and ask for advice. So for example, we had somebody who found an injured bat who called us a few weeks ago, and we sent out our bird expert staff member to go and check out the bat, and he was able to catch the bat safely and take it to a local rehab. So we are very knowledgeable about this area and within the land between and what's available for wildlife rehab in this area. Another note on that is that turtles can actually survive really, really terrible injuries. So even if you think a turtle looks dead, it's most likely not when it's been hit by a car. And so it's always best practice to kind of do a test, poke the turtle's leg. And if you see movement, to always take that turtle, get it off of the road and transport it safely, or get somebody else to transport it to help. And with dead turtles, even if a turtle is dead and it has eggs inside of it, we can take the eggs out of the dead turtle and incubate those eggs and have the baby turtles still survive. So that's another option as well. If you see that a turtle looks like maybe there's a broken egg beside the turtle, there's a good chance that there are more eggs inside.
Thanks, Grace. That's so interesting. I'm glad to know that there'd be a little bit of hope. It's always so heartbreaking seeing injured turtles and injured wildlife. That's great. And then Neil, did you have anything from like a BC perspective?
Yeah, for sure. I think the short answer, if you're in BC, is the SPCA. If you go to their website or call, they have a 1-800 number. They will put you in touch with a local rehab facility. So they do offer that service, and it's probably the easiest if you're not sure where you are. There's not too many wildlife rescue centers. They're pretty hard to. They're far and few between. So just keep that in mind. If it is an injured large animal that's by a road, bear, moose, deer, they can be quite dangerous to you to approach. And it's best to call either a conservation officer or the RCMP, and they will determine what the best course of action is.
Wonderful. Thank you, Neil. It's great information. And Tracy, do you have any questions in the chat?
Yeah, it looks like we have a few coming in. Our first one is from Bruce, and it's directed to Grace. He asks, what limits the northern extent of turtle habitat?
So some turtles are able to survive in northern areas. So some turtles are able to survive extreme climate. And some turtles are not. So some turtles are not able to adapt to extreme climates. And the main thing for that would be hibernation. So some turtles are able to hibernate under the ice and breathe through their butts all winter long. Just a fun fact, turtles can breathe through their butts. But some turtles are not. So it depends on how that turtle is able to adapt to winter conditions. For example, painted turtles are found pretty far north into Ontario, and that's because they are able to survive freezing temperatures. Their blood can actually freeze completely solid, and they can survive that. So some animals are able to adapt and others are not. But in Ontario, mainly it's snapping turtles and painted turtles that can kind of extend really far north, whereas some of our more habitat specific turtles don't extend as far.
Thank you, Grace. Looks like we have another question from Gisela, and I think maybe this one can go to Neil this time. And she asks, we have muskweed growing increasingly in our lake. Is that connected to warming or pollutants in the lake? And is it a useful weed to have?
Yeah, I wonder if muskweed is also called chara, which is I believe it's an algae that grows. So I guess what ends up happening for a lot of lakes, and I can't speak specifically about muskweed, but if that's the plant I'm thinking of, it is a native plant. So I mean, it's not an invasive plant. A lot of lakes can have an end life to them, so that is something that can be natural, but can also be expedited if there's a lot of sedimentation, nutrient loading from upstream influences. So you'd have to sort of take a look at the watershed that's around your site, maybe for a bit more of a context on that. But yeah, are there sources of nutrients that are coming into your lake? Would be one question I'd have, or sedimentation. The faster the lake fills in with either sediments or plants, the quicker it'll look like that third slide I had that looked more of like a bog or fen that was no longer a lake.
Thanks, Neil. And it looks like, yeah, there was a question in the chat, but then you provided a really great answer to Bruce there, so that's great. And then Tracy, did you actually have a question? I think you maybe were thinking of some while they were presenting.
Yeah, I think for Grace again, I was wondering if you can tell us what you have presented a lot of different volunteer opportunities in lots of different ways the public can get involved, but if you could tell us the number one thing the public can do to help turtles.
Oh, that's a great question. So the number one thing that people can do to help turtles, I would say, is to help turtles across the road. So be vigilant when you're driving. And if you see a turtle that is on the road or on the side of the road about to cross, help that turtle cross the road in the direction that it is traveling. And again, if you see an injured turtle on the road, you want to take that turtle to the trauma center or another wildlife rehab so that that animal can be helped. And education is such a powerful tool. So sharing the knowledge that you gain about different things, all the things that you've learned today, sharing that knowledge, if you share it with one person and they share it with another person, then knowledge can spread. So that's really powerful as well.
That's great. That's so important. We were chatting just before everything started today. That's so interesting that like turtles that drive to go back to their ancestral habitat is so strong that if you were to pick up the turtle and put it on the other side of the road against the direction it's traveling, it'll just turn back around. So they're just such interesting creatures. I'm always learning something new about them. So that's fantastic. And we do have another question in the chat here, and I'm happy to read it here, Tracy, now that I have the floor. But it comes from Caroline Hillsmith. Here in Dundas, Ontario, we have Dundas Turtle Watch to protect nesting sites and rescue turtles in and around Coots Paradise Marsh. Oh, that's just something that she's sharing. That's fantastic. Oh, that's so great to hear. And Grace, are you familiar with the Dundas Turtle Watch as well?
I'm not familiar with that specific program, but there are actually tons of turtle programs all across Ontario, and a lot of them are volunteer based. And there's actually a website called the Ontario Turtle Conservation Network, where you can actually look up any Ontario turtle project that's happening based on where you are in Ontario. So you can find wherever you're in Ontario, you can find projects that are local to you. And Coots Paradise is a really cool place. So I'm very glad that there are people protecting turtles there. That's awesome.
Oh, that's so cool. I'd love to send that link out for all of our Ontario folks.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat right now.
Amazing. That's great. So we've come to the end here. I'll just maybe invite our speakers to add any final words or any extra things you'd like to plug in relation to your work, and then we'll close. And then if anyone has any other questions that pop into their head, feel free to send them my way at lakeblitz@livinglakescanada.ca, and we'll make sure that we get those questions answered. So I'll hand it over to our speakers if there's anything else.
Go ahead, Neil.
Well, thanks, Grace. Yeah, I would want to just thank everyone for taking the time to spend an hour with us on a virtual, at least for us, it's a really hot day out here. Yeah, and if you need any more information or want to invite us up to your lake for a workshop or have any questions about wetlands, feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and the only other thing that I would add is that we are a grassroots charity that runs on donation. So if you would like to support our charity or any of our programs, you can buy some really awesome turtle merchandise online or make an online donation. And thank you so much for listening to me talk about turtles. It's really a passion. So it's always fun to talk to like-minded people.
Oh, that's wonderful. And if Figgy is around, maybe it'd be great to say goodbye. But as you said, he's a bit artist.
I put him back because he was climbing everywhere like a child and climbing over my feet with his sharp claws. So he actually went back in his tank.
That's totally understandable. Well, thank you to our speakers. Thank you to everyone for sharing your time with us. Remember to get your lake photos in to win prizes for the photo challenge. And I'm really looking forward to seeing more of your observations come rolling in as we move into our August sampling month. So thank you again and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.